Why are U.S. military bases still named after men who fought against America? Senator Angus King didn't hold back, calling out the Defense Department for keeping Confederate names tied to slavery and rebellion. He argues it's time to stop glorifying traitors and start honoring those who actually defended the nation. This exchange raises a powerful question. What message do we send to today's soldiers if we keep celebrating those who fought to divide the country?
Current soldiers or other soldiers to rename, and you slipped a minute ago. You said we're returning these bases to their original names. Robert E. Lee, leading general of the Confederacy, Pickett, the other names. Why are you doing this? I don't understand what the motivation is to rename bases for people who took up arms against their country on behalf of slavery. What possible motivation can there be for this? Who is telling you to do this? Who is urging you to do current soldiers or other soldiers to rename? And you slipped a minute ago. You said we're returning these bases to their original names. Robert E. Lee, leading general of the Confederacy, Pickett, the other names. Why are you doing this? I don't understand what the motivation is to rename bases for people who took up arms against their country on behalf of slavery. What possible motivation can there be for this? Who is telling you to do this? Who is urging you to do this?
Senator, the veterans and service members across the country who have deployed from Fort Bragg or Fort Benning or Fort Hood or Fort Pickett, there's a legacy, there's a connection to those bases and to those places, to what they trained for there, what they did for, and what they came home back to. That matters to them. Ask enough of them, as I do, all the time, before and later. And we recognize the service of those who were put into the replacement. No one's disputing that. I would never dispute that. What we're looking at is erasing history, erasing names, erasing base names that service members are tied to. Talk to people that serve at Bragg. Ask people that serve at Fort Bragg or Fort Benning if they like the fact that the names have been returned. And to a man and to a woman, they will tell you, thank God we're back to Fort Bragg, and thank God we're back. And thankfully, because so many men and women in this country have served, there's a Benning and a Bragg and a Pickett and a Hood has a Silver Star or a Medal of Honor that we could rename the base to because of the limits of what Congress allowed us to do. So this is something we've been proud to do, something that's important for the morale of the Army, and those communities appreciate that we've returned it back to what it was instead of trying to play this game of erasing names.
We're not erasing history, Mr. Secretary. We're recognizing history and recognizing that mistakes have been made in this country. The greatest of all was the Civil War, where people took up arms against their country on behalf of the institution of slavery. And to continue the practice of recognizing those people and honoring them by the naming of these bases is, I believe, an insult to the people of the United States. Let me talk about the budget. I don't understand why the budget is coming to us in two pieces. Why not give us an honest base budget instead of putting a piece of it in reconciliation? As I understand it, OMB is saying we're going to have a flat defense budget for the next 4 or 5 years. Are we planning reconciliation every year from now on? Why not give us an honest budget telling us what your priorities are, and then we can consider it. This committee always works in a bipartisan basis on the defense budget. We all want to see some increases in the defense budget, and yet you're giving us this this fake, here's a piece of the budget, here's another. You're cutting in the base budget, you're cutting shipbuilding in half and saying, well, we're going to make it up in reconciliation. Are we going to have reconciliation every year, which basically, by the way, puts a significant part, 10 or 15% of the defense budget in an wholly partisan decision-making process, whereas in the history of this committee, it's always been bipartisan. Why are we doing it this way?
Senator, from our view, the budget number 961 meets the requirements and threats that we face. And
that's not the number. The number is 892.6. You're adding reconciliation. That's my whole point. Why not give us a base budget of 961 or whatever the right number is, what you consider the right number, and then we can operate and make our decisions. Why do it in this bifurcated way that really is fooling the American people about what the defense budget is?
We're not trying to fool anybody, sir. It's 2 bills, 1 budget. We're working with OMB, and we feel very comfortable with the number of $961 billion.
Why don't you give us a straight-up budget for the Defense Department? That's my question.
Senator, this is a straight-up budget for the Defense Department, and it's a 13% increase over what Joe Biden gave us.
It is a 2-part defense budget. Part of it is in reconciliation instead of in the budget that's being presented to this committee. This committee only has a partial review of the budget. I don't understand why we can't have an honest, straightforward budget instead of this son of Oko that you're putting over on us. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Angus King's exchange here is raw and revealing, and it goes far beyond just a debate about military base names. This is really about how we choose to remember history and whether we honor those who took up arms against the United States. King makes a powerful point. Robert E. Lee and other Confederate generals weren't just historical figures, they were traitors to the Union. He argues that continuing to name military bases after them sends the wrong message, one that glorifies a rebellion that fought to preserve slavery. But Hegseth pushes back hard, framing the renaming as an attack on military tradition and morale. He argues that soldiers have deep ties to the names of these bases, and that renaming them feels like erasing history. This clash exposes a bigger cultural fight. Is America correcting a historical wrong, or rewriting the past to fit today's politics? Then the discussion shifts to the defense budget, and King calls out what he sees as political gamesmanship. He doesn't just criticize the numbers, he accuses the administration of essentially hiding the true cost of defense spending by splitting the budget into 2 parts, a move that could make funding more partisan and less transparent. What you see here is more than a policy disagreement. It's a moment where a senator is demanding honesty, clarity, and accountability about our history and about how taxpayer money is spent. This clip is a masterclass in the tension between tradition and progress, patriotism and truth, symbolism and substance. And it leaves viewers with tough questions. Should we keep honoring figures from America's darkest chapter? And are we being told the full truth about how much we spend on defense? If you want a deeper understanding of how politics, history, and national identity collide, this exchange is worth every second.